that's where things happen and go wrong. Nothing ever goes exactly according to plan because some people don't want to do certain jobs and then may want to leave, which is what happened. I think, however, that the first was, I don't think Theresa May ever intended this as a major cabinet reshuffle. She had to sort out 2 or 3 jobs and that was about it. And so a lot of it was not moving people more than moving people.
Well, it was pretty heavily preloaded, wasn't it?
Here's where I think the problem arises. I think they meant to have a big change at ministerial level, just below cabinet. So all of the changes you're seeing today and the new ones you will see come in today, and I think there will be a large number of new people, new faces, you know, lots more different people with different talents coming in. That was where the big impact was, not separating out the cabinet, because the cabinet, I think they want to return to the cabinet later once they've got the ministerial stuff sorted out. But they had to get a couple of things sorted. So the problem was all the media that went before, not blaming the media for that, by the way, because, you know, I think that...
Well, no, because the buck stops on that one with Theresa May, doesn't it?
That could have been slapped down, and I think, therefore, that was the issue where some of the stuff that was out there should have been heavily slapped down, and it should have been clearer. But, you know, these things happen, and the key thing is this present reshuffle, the ministerial stuff, which I haven't seen to much degree, but we'll see a lot more of that later.
But of all the prime ministers, of all moments of history, this prime minister did not want things to go wrong with this reshuffle. And let's face it, it did not go according to plan. You have Jeremy Hunt arguing with the Prime Minister and keeps his job as Health Secretary and indeed widens the brief. Who's in charge?
I wouldn't overread that, because when I was a cabinet minister and David Cameron was there, I was asked if I would like to move, and that happened before the reshuffle actually took place. And I said, look, I want to complete the reforms at DWP. They're not all through now. We need to complete them yet, and there's going to be some difficulties and problems, etc. we're going to have to overcome. And I wanted to stay. And so there is a discussion. If you value somebody in cabinet, but you think it's maybe time for them to move, you have to discuss that with them, because if you value them, you don't want them to go. And I think that is where the Jeremy Hunt was.
All right, you say valued, some might say frightened of.
No, I don't think so. I think none of these things are quite as authoritarian as you might think. Of course, if you determine to sack...
Isn't that, you say might want. Don't you want a Prime Minister to say, I'm in charge and this is what I want?
Absolutely. But I think if the individual concerned really, really, really only wants to do a job, I had that and I wanted to stay where I was, I would have happily, you know, gone if they wanted somebody else to do it. But my point was, he was in a position where he said, look, I think, on balance, I actually think I'm better off in this job, and he discussed it, debated with her. This is what we understand. I have no idea what on behind closed doors.
But on a human level, wouldn't she already have known that he wanted to stay in the job? Wouldn't she have, in the days before, have said, look, I'm thinking of this, what do you think? I mean, it just smacks a bit of a rather chaotic last-minute response to everything.
Well, lots of things in... You know, I hate to say this, but you've been around long enough and you've seen enough cabinet reshuffles that know that things don't go right at times when somebody doesn't work into a post, doesn't want to do it, would rather go, whatever, you end up with last-minute changes. And I don't know what was intended. I think that he originally, I hear, had been asked whether he'd like to take on the Cabinet Office role, but again, was very clear he wanted to stay at Health. So, you know, this is always...
So she did know you wanted to stay at Health?
Well, I don't know, because I'm not privy to these things. All I'm saying is, I wouldn't settle on what happened yesterday. There were new people came in. There were 3 or 4 people that have not been in Cabinet before as Secretaries of State. 3 people of them, Esther McVeigh, for example, is now back.
Well, now let's talk about that, because she takes over from Justine, a job that Justine Greening was offered, and Justine Greening said, no, I don't want that. Now,
yeah, I wouldn't look at what the job was. I think with Justine Greening, there was a sense that she desperately wanted to stay at education. She had made some very big statements about looking after the social mobility brief within education, and I think, you know, as far as she was concerned, that's where she wanted to be. Now, you could argue that the briefing and the media around her in the 2 days before wasn't very helpful for the reshuffle, which it wasn't, because, of course, it was all talking about her being sacked.
So that bit is the media's fault?
No, I don't ever blame the media. They will go where you let them go, and if they are told that is simply incorrect, untrue, and a total falsehood, then they will stop reporting it.
I read in the media again that one of the reasons that Justine Greening didn't want to become Work and Pension Secretary was because she felt that the toxic role of universal credit had made the job almost impossible. That's your big thing, universal
No,
credit.
no. Universal credit is working fine, and the changes they made. I mean, I resigned because I wanted the money back into it, as well as I was concerned about some of the proposed changes to disability benefits. And I resigned on the basis I wasn't winning the argument anymore, so I had to go. Since then, to be fair to the government, they've put some $2 billion back into universal credit, which has helped enormously with the rollout. But the rollout is going fine. I mean, there are a couple of facts which are never gone over by the media. 60% of the people coming onto universal credit right now carry already debts and arrears from the existing benefits. So the existing benefit system are so dysfunctional that you see as having to resolve those problems, which it is doing, by the way. And there's a lot of nonsense. There's been a campaign by, the Labour Party and the left to try and denigrate this. You think tax credits was rolled out, nearly 1 million people got no benefits at all. So this is a better benefit. And Joseph Rowntree themselves said universal credit has the capacity to be the biggest poverty fighter of all the government benefit systems. And I think, therefore, that is why it's right. So it isn't about that.
She
didn't want to move.
Universal credit. No,
she just didn't want to move. And I think that's a fact of life.
Well, the person who is taking over this is Esther McVey. Raised some eyebrows. She's not seen as widely sympathetic, perhaps, to some of the things that when she was minister before. Is it a good appointment?
I think so, because universal credit, all the big reforms that are going through at the moment are complex. You've got the poor pensions reforms going through, the single tier, the automatic enrolment. You've got a whole raft of reforms. I mean, DWP is like 3 departments, really. It's a huge brief and a very senior one. But she has served there. She served there for the better part of 3 to 4 years.
Well, some say not entirely very successfully.
Well, I wouldn't say so. I mean, as employment minister working with her when I was there, the work programme was accredited by the NAO as arguably the most efficient back-to-work programme that's ever been. We've got more people back into work. We've seen income inequality fall. We've seen huge successes. I mean, the fact is that we have some of the lowest unemployment rates in the whole of the Western world, are down to the welfare reforms. The fact is often forgotten in the course of this. It's been one of the big success stories of the government was changing the way that welfare works, and universal credit is part of that complete process as it rolls out. So she knows that and understands that. And, for all the talk on the left, they're going to spend more money, throw money at it, change it all. Truth is, they haven't got anything that they're saying that makes any sense at all. The welfare reforms have had a dramatic effect on the working age population, and more of them, more lone parents, more young people, more people that are long-term unemployed is so successful getting them back to work, they've had to close off the work programme. There aren't enough people to put through it. So she knows all about that, and she was party to that. So the government wants this to go through, so she was a right choice to take that job on. I mean, I think she'll do a really good job.
Now, you started this chat by saying that there are always problems with reshuffles, but the purpose of any reshuffle surely is that the leader, the person in charge of that reshuffle, wants to come out of it stronger. Is Theresa May stronger or weaker as a result of what's happened over the last 48 hours?
I think Theresa May has strengthened dramatically since the election. It's not an easy job when you run a government.
No. I was very specific.
Well, I'm going to answer it, but I tell you, it's not an easy job. Let's put this into perspective. Okay. When you are the head of a government that has no overall majority and that relies on an agreement. I mean, as Mrs. Merkel is finding out right now, you are diminished by that because you have not the power to say what you want and do what you want. But actually, despite all of the protestations, she has got the bill through, the Brexit bill through. It's almost through. It'll go to the Lords. She's managed to get a number of changes through. The housing policy and programme is really up and running. It's quite radical. So I think she'll be defined more by our policy areas and the success of what we do. Reshuffles, you love them. The media loves them.
I'm not sure. Well, anyway.
Well, all right. The media loves them because they give you this instant dynamic. But the truth is, nobody out there